All right, what's going on, Chad? Here it's 3 o'clock. We start with the playoffs in Major League Baseball. Game two of the ALCS. Mariners lead the series 1-0. Right now, top of third in Toronto. Mariners and Blue Jays are tied up at 3, and the M's have a runner on first with 2 outs. Coming up at 5:08 on TBS and True TV, the Los Angeles Dodgers take on the Milwaukee Brewers at 4 is your pitching matchup. We have a Monday Night Football doubleheader. Bills are at the Falcons at 4:50 pitching matchup. We have a Monday Night Football doubleheader. Bills are at the Falcons at 4:15. That game's going to be on ESPN. Buffalo favored by 3.5. The Bears at the Commanders, 5:15 on ABC. Washington favored by 5.5. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing is coming at you next. Bill Orm of the Oregonian will stop by to talk Oregon State, firing Trent Bray, and Brendan Slaughter at Beavers Edge at 4:20. All right, it's going to be difficult for me to stay focused today because I've got a billion sports things I want to talk about. So I've got to try and remain focused. What's going on, my friends? Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. I'll be with you all the way up until 6 o'clock. The Trailblazers have two preseason games this week. We have one tomorrow at home, 7 o'clock tip against the Golden State Warriors. A game you can hear live right here on 620 Rip City Radio and streaming on our free iHeartRadio app. Chris Burkhart will have game day tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I'll have the Rip City Drive live from Moda Center from 3 until 5. Now, as I've told you, and I continue to remind you, I am a man of the people. I know this might be hard to believe, but you know it's true. You know it's true because I want to take care of you. I want to help people. It's one of my number one priorities. So all week, today and throughout the rest of the week, it's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Every single freaking day. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, which means I'm going to take care of you. And we've got tickets to give away for the season opener against Minnesota. So I'm not trying to peddle preseason tickets on you right now. I've got tickets all week for the home opener against Minnesota. That means real basketball with the top players going head-to-head in the season opener, and you have a chance to be there to check out the new video monitors, which are amazing. I was at the game a couple of nights ago on Friday, and it was epic, man. Absolutely epic. Or whatever day that was. Thursday, Friday. I think it was Friday. It was awesome. And so I've got tickets all week. We're going to do a pair today at 5 o'clock. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. So Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday is every single day this week, all right? And it's for the opener against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So keep that in mind. Just write that down, etch it in your dome. We're going to take care of you. We also have a baseball game that's ongoing right now up in Toronto, bottom of 3. Mariners and Blue Jays tied up at 3. And I got to be honest with you, the baseball is going to kill me. The last 2 games I've taken in have been intense. They've been extended, and they've ended in a crazy way. It started on Thursday with That game 4 between the Dodgers and Phillies from Dodger Stadium that went into extras. Phillies trying to win 2 at Dodger Stadium after dropping the first 2 at home. And then we get the error from the pitcher where he lost his mind and decided to throw it 5 miles wide to the catcher, and the Dodgers win. And then we got that game on Friday that started at 5 o'clock. The Trailblazer game started at 7. When the basketball game was over and I was still sitting up in Section 113 with the radio crew, the game was still going. Over 5 hours of intense, are you kidding me, baseball? A game that I thought both teams had lost like 9 or 10 times. And the Mariners found a way to overcome and get to the ALCS for the first time in 24 years. And then the conventional wisdom was the Mariners would be gassed. Their plane got into Toronto late. They might be flat. And then they go out there and win game 1, powered by a Cal Raleigh home run that left his bat with 108 miles per hour exit velocity. And the pitching last night by Miller was unreal. He pitched out of his backside. He gave up that home run to Springer, and then after that, he just settled in and was unbelievable. That was an awesome game. Great game last night. Great win for the M's. I'll start with the Oregon football team, the Ducks and the Hoosiers at Autzen. Going into the game, I thought Oregon would win. I did know, based on a few people I had spoken with, that there was a lot of smart money going in on the Hoosiers, plus the 7.5 where the line opened. And so I thought, well, maybe it's going to be a closer game than I had first thought. It never occurred to me that Indiana was going to go in there and dominate on both sides of the football and win the game. I was shocked. Like a lot of you Duck fans out there, surprised. But I don't think it's a bad loss. I think it's just hard for us to understand how a team like Indiana is legitimately one of the best teams in the country, and not only that, is legitimately a national title contender. But that's exactly who they are under Coach Cignetti. They went into Autzen, and you saw it from the start. They dominated at the point of attack. They were the more physical team. They outcoached and out-executed the Ducks for 60 minutes and won. And the part that impressed me the most was how Indiana responded after the pick 6 when Oregon tied it up at 20. They went right down the field, mixing it up between the run and the pass, and scored with ease. And then every time Dante Moore dropped back, he had a guy up in his face and was experiencing pressure. They did a great job of mixing up their defense. I think Dante Moore was confused, and they saw things they didn't expect to see. But what's even more remarkable about Indiana is they should not be doing this. They're not a football school. They are a basketball school, and their turnaround has happened over a 2-year span. And you're like, what changed? Did they suddenly have an influx of cash? Did they suddenly have some tycoons who took interest in football? And the truth of the matter is, it's their head coach. It's Coach Cignetti. He's the reason why they're so good. He's turned the entire program around. And when they take the field now, compared to last year's squad, which made the playoff, they have better talent, they have more speed, and they're a more physical football team. I mean, that win was impressive. And I thought that the speed of the Ducks would show up and really be an issue for Indiana, but it wasn't. And nobody on Oregon could cover number 13. I mean, he was open all day long. That was an impressive game. And Coach Cignetti, he's brash, he's arrogant, he's very happy to tell you about the success he's having. But, after the game, he was very rational.
All right, great win, great win. Really proud of the team, proud of the coaches. Feel really great for our fans and supporters. The number one largest alumni base in America with over 800,000. And it's a great road win.
Yeah, it was a great road win. There's no question about that. End of 3 in Toronto. Mariners and Blue Jays still tied up at 3. The sad part is for Indiana, look at the coaching openings now that are taking place across the country. Penn State just fired James Franklin. Now, if you look into the history of Coach Cignetti, what state do you think he has ties to? If you guessed Pennsylvania, you'd be 100% correct. I just want to know how big the plane's going to be that's sent to Bloomington, Indiana, and how much cash is filled in the fuselage. How much money are they going to send to Bloomington to try and convince him to be their head coach? And if you're Penn State, why wouldn't you hire that guy? And if you're Coach Cignetti, why wouldn't you look at the landscape and say, you know what? I'm never going to be hotter than I am right now. I've got to cash in and go out there and get one massive payday. Because the truth of the matter is, the success that Cignetti's having at Indiana right now, I don't think it's sustainable. How could it be? It's a basketball school. How are they going to be able to have the support to truly be able to compete against the big boys when it comes to football? And so Coach Cignetti's going to be stuck in that weird spot where it's like, man, I've built something beautiful here in Indiana, but is it sustainable? So just keep an eye on that situation. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Penn State will have massive interest in Coach Cignetti, who just pulled off the best win of the college football season thus far. Indiana, the basketball school, not coached by Bobby Knight, went into Autzen with Coach Cignetti and beat the Ducks. And it wasn't like a fluke win. It wasn't like they ran a bunch of trick plays or some type of option offense. They just went out there and man for man physically beat them up. Now, the flip side for Oregon is at the end of the season? No. They're still ranked in the top 10. Is their season over? No. Do they still have a shot to win a national championship? Yes. It's because we have an expanded playoff, which has been the best thing for the freaking sport in a long time. Instead of having the AP and the get into a title game, it was the dumbest system of all time that was get into a title game. It was the dumbest system of all time that was rammed down our throats because you had a bunch of losers lining their fat ass pockets with money. And now we've got an expanded playoff, and what that means is you can be Ohio State and lose your final game of the year to Michigan and look terrible. You can lose a game at home midseason to Indiana and still be fine. And I'll tell you one thing that I know Dan Lanning and his entire coaching staff is going to have after that game, the players' attention. If you talk to guys who have played, the one thing they'll tell you is that even if they play poorly in a win, when the coaches are trying to explain to them the things they need to focus on in the back of their mind, like, dude, we got the win, whatever. But when you go out there and get physically pounded, the coaches are going to have all the guys' attention. That's the bottom line. So great win for Coach Cignetti. I was stunned. And for Oregon this season, you just got to move forward, continue to work on the details, prepare, and that should be a good eye-opener to, hey, we got to stay focused, we got to stay locked in, and we got to be willing to be more physical because Indiana just jackhammered them. Stunned. But the Ducks season is just fine. They still have Dante Moore. They're still the same team they were before they lost to Indiana. But I guess the one thing that loss will do is it's going to make it more difficult to access the Big Ten title game. But the playoff and everything they want to accomplish is still right there in front of them. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We're going to be joined by Brendan Slaughter of Beavers Edge at 4:20. And then Bill Orm's going to join the show from the Oregonian a little bit later in the show. And at 5 o'clock, it's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday every day of the week this year as we want to get you to the home opener against Minnesota. You got the Rip City Drive. I'm Chad Doing. I appreciate your time. Mariners and Blue Jays tied up at 3, top of the 4th up in Toronto. I didn't know I was in a Wang Chung mood, but I am. Thank you, Shacker. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. 50 out in Boring. Got a message from my man Tony out in Boring. He said, Indiana's win was extremely impressive and very depressing as a Ducks fan. Coach Signetti is an Italian red ass. Dante Moore reminded me of Austin Powers when he lost his mojo. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Dante Moore got dominated by the Indiana defense. I just didn't expect the physicality that the Hoosiers brought to the table. But I shouldn't be surprised because Coach Signetti obviously demands that from his players. They were well prepared. And the Ducks, you keep in mind, this went to my mind as well. They're a young football team. Let's just pretend that you and I are 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And let's say that we all of a sudden go to Penn State and get a huge win on national TV in overtime. And then we have a bye week after that game. And we've got people telling us how great we are, how dominant we are, how we ended the Penn State program. The parties happen. I could just see how it'd be easy to lose a little bit of focus as a youngster after a big win at Penn State. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that's reality. I've always thought that coaching college kids, like, that's a risky business. You never know what they're thinking about, what's going on in their domes, nor that you really want to know what's going on inside their domes. And somehow these coaches are able to get the most out of them on most weeks. I mean, let's face it, most young kids now are more worried about their cell phones and their orgasms than they are anything else. So the fact that you might get distracted after a big win at Penn State's understandable. But the Ducks are going to be fine. They're loaded to the gills with talent on both sides of the ball. They're also really good at the line of scrimmage. I think in a lot of ways, getting your butt kicked like that can be a very good thing because you're going to get the attention of the guys and they're going to go back to the basics, blocking, tackling, details, and the coaches as well. They got out-coached, so it causes, I think, the entire coaching staff to reevaluate. Dan Lanning and his crew can get together and say, hey, where did we miss the boat here? Where did we go wrong? And then you continue to move forward and work on details. And if you look at their schedule, you got Rutgers, road game. That could be a challenge. They have to go to Iowa, which is going to be tough because they're physical just like Iowa or Indiana. Another physical team. You got to go to Washington. They're going to be fine. They may not have access to the Big Ten title game, with the tiebreak. If you look at Indiana's schedule, it's hard to pinpoint the loss that's on the schedule, but it could come. They're a group of kids, too. They can have an off day. But they were well prepared for that game, and they just physically moved them off the ball. It reminds me, what Kenny Dillingham said. Arizona State did not have Sam Levitt. They had Jeff Sims. Levitt was out in that game on Saturday night against Utah. So they went with Jeff Sims. They're not the same team without Levitt, but that's not why they lost the game. Utah can't really throw the football with Dampier, but they can sure run it. And they ran the football at will. And what they do with those quarterback runs, Kyle Whittingham, they bring in an extra offensive lineman as a tight end, and they just block down the edge, and he takes off. And Kenny Dillingham said, this game's not really confusing. He goes, they just got up to the line of scrimmage, Utah, and moved us. They moved bodies. It's the most basic part about football. It's like if our guys are more physical than your guys and we move you off the line of scrimmage, good things are going to happen. And that's what Indiana did. So I don't think it's a travesty. I don't think it's the end of the season. And this is the way football seasons are supposed to work. You're not supposed to win every single weekend. Yeah, the Ducks went unbeaten last year, but that's a rarity. So now you refocus and continue to move forward. And, boy, I tell you what, Dante Moore, he did not have a good game, but he showed me toughness because he was getting the crap beat out of him throughout the entire afternoon. But he continued to get up, Sometimes he'd hobble back to the huddle, but I think he earned some of his teammates' respect with the overall toughness that he showed in that game. Like, I walked away with more respect for Dante Moore for the toughness that he showed in that game. But all the things I thought were going to happen in that game did not. The Ducks couldn't run the ball. Their speed didn't show up in the game. And Indiana just controlled every aspect. Very impressive. And Coach Cignetti's darn good. The reason why I know that is because this guy took Indiana. Indiana. They haven't been good at football my entire life. You hear Indiana, you think Bobby Knight, Isaiah Thomas, and basketball. You don't think football because they're not a football school. He came in and inside of 2 years turned the entire program around. He flipped it upside down, just coaching his tail off. There's a reason why he has a lot of self-confidence. Some would call it arrogance, call it whatever you want. It's because he believes in everything that he's doing. And he's getting results, and the players respond to him. I mean, he's not a young guy. I think he's like 64, but the energy and the confidence, I can see why guys might run through a brick wall for that dude. I don't even think I like his personality. He kind of rubs me the wrong way, but I respect the heck out of him, right? There's a lot of coaches like that where I don't necessarily like the personality. Like Greg Popovich, I can't stand him, but I respect the heck out of him. Phil Jackson was wildly arrogant. Spent half the time on the bench with that weird extra cushy chair that he sat in, like doing like a self-manicure half the time. Wouldn't call timeouts, acted disinterested. I still respect the heck out of the guy because he was awesome. The way he was able to manage egos and utilize the Tex Schramm triangle. So there's a lot of guys like that. But Coach Cignetti's awesome. What they've done is remarkable, and that's why I have a feeling that he'll be at Penn State or somewhere where there's many more resources and a chance to win because he's not going to be able to sustain this type of success at Indiana. He's just not. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And at his age, he might as well take one more shot at getting hella paid, which he will. What a job he did. That was a great game. And, Dan Lanning was right. Like, hey, we got out-coached. We got outplayed. We got to, get back to the drawing board and continue to work. And that's what it's all about. Other things that jumped out at me, I thought USC's win over Michigan was very impressive. USC really underperformed and got pushed around in that Illinois game as a 7-point favorite. They came into this game against Michigan. I thought going in, I liked some of the matchups for USC, but I've watched enough Michigan football between last year and this year, and just a couple of weeks ago against Nebraska. Michigan is not dynamic on offense right now because their quarterback's young, but what they do really well is win at the point of attack. Their offensive line moving you off the ball, they run the football at will, and they just break your spirit by physically dominating you. That's Michigan's pathway to success. So I didn't know how USC would handle that. Would they be able to hold up in the trenches? And they did. Lincoln Riley's team showed some toughness and some physicality at the point of attack. Didn't expect that, but they did and got the win. That was an impressive win, and they needed that because they're getting ready to make a trip to South Bend, Indiana to meet Notre Dame. So I thought that was an impressive win. I thought Georgia, another team that I know is just iron tough, like Indiana and Coach Cignetti, Kirby Smart's crew is tough. They opened up that game looking like garbage against Auburn. But the one thing we know about Hugh Freeze, his teams, if you can continue to compete, will come apart at the seams, and Georgia was able to overcome. Bad start on the road, and they came back and won the game. So Georgia was very impressive. Utah is a very physical team. They're impressive. And the other team that stood out was Texas Tech. Texas Tech is legit. Those oil tycoons down there that are Red Raider fans, they're like, hey, we're happy to pour some money into the program if it means you can bring us some wins. Shoot. Hey, Coach McGuire, how much money you need? No problem, my friend. We'll take care of you. They just open up the oil spigot and start pumping money into the NIL. They went out and bought themselves a defensive line, and they're terrorizing people now. But they look really good. I just hope Sam Levitt from Westland can come back and be able to compete in this game against Texas Tech on Saturday after missing the game against Utah. At 4:20, Brendan Slaughter from Beavers Edge is going to join the show. I want to get his take on the Trent Bray firing, and we'll find out who might be some early names or potential candidates that they're going to focus on. The reason why I think it was a good idea to make the move now with Trent Bray, like if you know you're going to fire him, better to do it now because you know how the cycles work in college football. It's tough. But this gives them a chance to get out in front of a coaching hire and bring in the search firm. And I would love to meet a search firm that does a full search for a college football coach. Like, how does that work? Anyways, the search firm will come in, and then they can start the process of trying to identify candidates. And then those conversations between the firm and the candidate's agents can begin so that you're able to identify and start the process of getting your guy. If you wait until the end of the year and then decide you're going to fire Coach Bray, then you're behind the 8 ball, and you would probably miss out on candidates who may have been available had you done it sooner. So they decide to make the move, and now they're going to be able to go out with the search firm and locate the coach. And I think what you do right now is you just strip it down to the studs. Get rid of the coach. Don't worry about the portal and how many players leave. And frankly, I've seen a lot of the guys play. I wouldn't mind if all of them jumped in the portal. Just start from scratch with the right coach. And you've got to get this hire right. It's got to be the right hire. And then you're going to have to remain patient as they continue to build it back up from the studs. And look, I like Trent Bray, and I know for a fact that the players on the team love Coach Bray. But in college football now, it's a results-oriented business. And if you're not getting the job done and the donors who support the program don't want you around, the athletic director is going to have to make a move. And they got donor money to step up and pay the buyout of $4.8 million, far less than the $50 million that James Franklin got from Penn State. Only in America can you suck in big games and still get paid out $50 million. The best job in America is being a fired college football coach with a monster buyout. It's incredible. James Franklin is laughing all the way to the bank. And that's what I would have done if I was Coach Franklin. Immediately after getting the phone call that they were going to fire you, I just log onto my bank account and just smile. Just let those checks keep pouring in. Thank you very much. But what happened at Penn State is a booster who's helping fund the operation decides, hey, I've seen enough. This guy can't win a big game. And losing back-to-back weeks to UCLA and Northwestern after we dropped the home game to Oregon in overtime is unacceptable. And all it takes is one of the big-time supporters, the boosters with big cash, to say, don't worry about the buyout. I'll pay it. Get his ass out of here. That's how it went down. And that's what Oregon State needs. They need a big-time donor. All the schools do. You need a big sugar daddy to help fund the operation. You know, for the extreme cost. It's crazy. Absolutely bonkers. So there you have it. That's where we're at. I thought USC's win was impressive. There's no shame in losing to Indiana. They're just a darn good football team. One of the best in the country. I know it's hard to understand that because they're Indiana, but yet they're one of the best teams in the country. It's weird. I'm not used to that because they've never been that team, right? But that's the way it is. Other things that jumped out at me, Ohio State was very impressive going into Illinois and winning by 18 points. Their defense and their physicality at the point of attack is very noticeable. I'm not sure what Ole Miss was doing, probably looking ahead to Georgia, but somebody forgot to tell them and Lane Kiffin that Washington State's not a bad football team. They won by 3 as the Cougs almost pulled off the upset. Florida coming off the big win against Texas, got jackhammered by A&M. I think A&M, the more I see of them, they're legit. They're unbeaten. They're top 5. They look really good. I thought Oklahoma was one of the most embarrassing programs over the weekend. I was ashamed to have been born from the state of Oklahoma after watching Oklahoma, Texas. They made the decision to rush John Mateer right back into the lineup and tried to spin it like he was okay. But the problem is I watched the game. He wasn't in rhythm. He hadn't practiced all week with the guys. He was errant with his throws, and he was pathetic. I think they let him rush back, and I think they made a poor decision. They should have gone with Hawkins, but here's the number one reason why. If you're Oklahoma and you're taking on Texas and you haven't lost a game, if you go with Hawkins and you lose a game to Texas, what's your excuse at the end of the year when the committee's huddling up to pick their playoff teams? Hey, we didn't have our best quarterback, our starting quarterback, John Mateer, in the rivalry game against Texas. But instead, they rushed Mateer back. He wasn't ready. He didn't look like he was in rhythm. The whole offense was off, and they got physically dominated. And their special teams sucked. Brent Venables should be ashamed for that effort. They were a joke. And props to Texas for just dominating at the line of scrimmage. And Arch Manning did just enough to get the win. But they won all three phases: offense, defense, special teams. I thought Oklahoma was a joke. Alabama went into Missouri and won. Not an easy place to get a win, but the more I see of Alabama, the more it looks like they've solved whatever issues they had, and they're one of the best teams in the country. What a surprise, right? Texas Tech hammered Kansas. As I mentioned, Texas Tech is legit. Sometimes in life you get what you pay for, especially when it's NIL dollars on the defensive line. And Tech is not your typical Big 12 team or whatever school you think they were when they had Mike Leach as coach. This is a team that wants to be physical at the line of scrimmage, and they are. Georgia looked great in that comeback win over Auburn. USC impressive against Michigan. Notre Dame is annoying because they've got two losses this year, A&M and Miami. And if you look at the rest of their schedule and how well they're playing right now, they're probably going to finish the year with two losses and still make the playoff. Utah's legit at the line of scrimmage and with their run game going for over 200 yards against Arizona State. I thought Colorado's come from behind win over Iowa State was impressive. And props to Coach Prime for dealing with surgery earlier in the week and still finding a way to get back out there on the field. Iowa State, after a hot start, has now dropped 2 games. And Florida State, after that win over Alabama, now 3-3 after a loss to Pittsburgh. Wild weekend in college football. There you have it. That's what I saw. Also, a big credit to the Seahawks. They got a few players back. Their defense was terrific against Jacksonville. And Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith-Njigba have a great chemistry between each other. And Njigba's got a chance to lead the NFL in receiving. But they're in tune right now. The two of those players are just in tune. I thought the Hawks bounce back after the loss to Tampa was terrific. Great road win. And again, with Jacksonville, they coming off the Monday night win over Kansas City, I was impressed. And then they come out, and then you see Trevor Lawrence, and you're like, what's going on? Like, the guy's so frustrating because you watch a game, a Jacksonville game, not that I recommend that, but it's got to drive the coach crazy. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. It's got to drive the coach crazy. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Right now, Mariners and Blue Jays tied up at 3, and we have a home run. Polanco did it. Mariners have just taken a 6-3 lead in the 5th. A 3-run bomb. Woo! Man, I love Polanco. He's been clutch. Gosh, that was balls of steel right there. 3-run bomb for Jorge Polanco. And the Mariners now 6-3 lead on the Jays after winning game 1. Oh, if they take game 2. Woo! Love that. So cool, man. I love Polanco. All right, there you have it. We'll keep things rolling at Rip City Drive, 503-248-0620. Every day this week's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Your chance to get tickets is coming up at 5. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. And Michael Shacker is wondering if Trent Bray was listening to this song on his way to Research Stadium on Saturday. It's possible. I love Huey, though. Crank this. That album's Sport is legendary. Every song on the freaking album's awesome. All right, 503-248-0620. The Mariners are unbelievable. They're going to get through this, and they're going to take a 2-0 lead going back home. It's unbelievable. 6-3 lead after taking game one. The game where they were supposed to be tired. I love that, too, when we act like pro athletes who travel in the most luxurious conditions are somehow not going to be well treated for. The amount of money these teams spend on their players, I think that stuff gets overblown from time to time. They had to feel great about themselves after that game on Friday. Unbelievable. That game was wild. It stressed me out. Like that's the type of game when it's over, it's like, what am I supposed to do now? Oh, my goodness. Also, no thanks to the Denver Broncos or the New York Football Jets for what they put me through yesterday. Both teams, both franchises, tried to set the NFL back by about 50 years yesterday with that game in London. Just a horrific football game. The Denver Broncos should be ashamed, and the New York Jets should definitely be ashamed. They're now 0-6. And again, I'll ask the question, hey, Aaron Glenn, do you now understand why people, including players, say the phrase, just the same old Jets? It's because you suck. And the Broncos should be embarrassed of themselves for what they did yesterday offensively. The Broncos' defense is unreal. They had 9 sacks. The Broncos are on pace now to set the all-time mark for sacks in a single season, which is currently held by the Chicago Bears from 1984 when they had 72. The Broncos are probably going to shatter that mark. Their pass rush is fierce. They have multiple guys who can attack, and they have great guys in the back end who can cover. Broncos' defense is great. Vance Joseph is coaching his ass off. But the Broncos' offense right now is just not where it needs to be. But here's what I love about the NFL compared to college football. And I've hated it for years. We always have these debates in college football about what team's the best, who should we rank number one. And then what they do is they start looking and nitpicking your wins. Well, Chad, technically Oregon didn't control the game for X number of minutes. You think I give a flying rip? All that matters in sports, and this is something you learn at a young age, you look up at the scoreboard when the time is gone. Who won the game? Oh, we did. Then you're a winner. We don't care about game control. We don't care about how sexy you looked when you were doing it. Who won the game? And that's why I love the NFL, because no one gives a rip about style points. Every team has ugly games that they find a way to win. And it goes down in the column the same as every other game. A W. And you move on and get ready for the next week. So you never apologize for winning a game in the NFL. The Broncos got the win. It was an ugly game. You move on and get ready for the New York Football Giants. But it was ugly. And the Broncos should be ashamed of themselves. They allowed the Jets to get 3 field goals. And then Garrett Bowles took a holding penalty in the end zone. And the Jets were leading at 11-10 by a single point. And the Broncos got a field goal with about 5 minutes remaining and were able to get the win. And the Jets are so inept on all fronts. They had the football with enough time on the clock near midfield, about the 46. But the problem is they can't pass protect, and Justin Fields holds onto the football too long, and he just was under pressure all day, and the Broncos were able to end the game with the sack. They had 9 sacks. That offensive line should be embarrassed, and most of the fault is on Justin Fields. You got to get rid of the football. What are you doing? They're terrible. The Jets are unwatchable, and there are a couple of other teams that are pretty awful, like Tennessee. Worst coached football team in the NFL right now is Tennessee. Second would be the Jets. But this whole idea that Justin Fields can play quarterback or that somehow he can be a franchise quarterback. It's all nonsense. He's terrible. He is not good. And if you watch him play, you're like, ugh. Oh, the other guy that sucks too, Geno Smith is awful right now at quarterback. I don't even know what Chip Kelly does when he looks at the play sheet right now. Well, if I call that, he's going to get sacked. If I call that play, he's going to throw a pick. The only thing they can do with Geno right now is underneath stuff. And it just continues to make that whole idea that somehow Geno is better than Sam Darnold laughable. You think the Raiders would take Sam Darnold right now over Geno? Like, I like Geno. Geno's got a great story. Geno was able to bounce back and get paid after, unfortunately, starting his career out with the Jets. And that's pretty much when you know when you're done. If you're drafted by the Jets, you might as well just choose a different career because their ownership, their front office, the way they do things there sucks. Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets and became a laughingstock. Aaron Rodgers then got the heck out of Dodge and went to Pittsburgh. And guess what? He knows how to play football again. And it's because he's playing for a franchise that's been one of the best run forever. And the Jets, for most of my life, have just been filled with a bunch of idiots. And it starts right at the top, and then we know it rolls downhill. So the Jets are terrible. The Broncos should be ashamed of themselves. Hey, Sean Payton, I know that you're a genius because you tell me, but please mix in some more runs. Run the football, coach. And for Bo Nix, look, I know you're happy right now. Your wife's pregnant. You're expecting your first child, but can you please ease up on the deep balls? The Bover throws have got to stop. Hey, Bo, can you please put a little more touch on the football on the deep balls? The guys you're trying to hit right now are pretty fast, and yet you're overthrowing them. So Bo's not connecting where he needs to connect. He's got to get better. Sean Payton's got to get better with the play calls. You might want to ease up on your personnel changes. He's got all these different packages, right? Personnel, groupings. He wants to show off how smart he is. It's like, dude, you're confusing everyone. Keep it simple. Keep your best players on the field, you dum-dum. It ain't working right now. And we know he's not going to turn over the play calling to anybody else. Whatever. You know what? Just get the win, baby. Just win. Isn't that what Al Davis said? Just win, baby. I don't know. It just frustrates me. That game, 6:30 in the morning, I got up for that. I'm drinking my coffee. I'm like, why did I wake up? Why am I watching this? And if we're trying to expand the game globally, Roger Goodell, you probably don't want to put the Broncos and Jets on a football field over in London because the locals are going to get one look at that piece of crap and say, we don't need this in our life. We don't need Aaron Glenn being 0-6 and the Jets stinking it up out there and then Sean Payton not understanding how to stick with the run and Bo Nix overthrowing everybody. That was embarrassing. I'm just telling you, you can't expand globally if your product sucks. That was a crappy product to put on over the pond. And the Broncos, that was like their fourth road game in 5 weeks. They ended with a trip to London. All right, we'll keep things rolling. 503-248-0620. I'm assuming we need to take a break now. My show sucks so much that Shacker was falling asleep on me in the control room. He's like, gosh, this Chad guy, can it just, it's not 6 o'clock fast enough around here. All right, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Should we just give the tickets to Aaron Glenn? Maybe he can come see a game in Moda Center. It'd be better than coaching the Jets. They suck. If you're a Jet fan, I apologize. East Coast Earl, pick a different team. I feel bad for you. He's been telling me for years, man, they suck, and they do. Jets, 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 Jets. I feel bad for Fireman Bill. They should refund all the money he spent on tickets over the years. Hey, what's going on? It's now 4 o'clock. We're going to start with baseball. The Seattle Mariners are on fire right now. Top of the sixth in Toronto. One out and a runner on third for the M's, who lead the game 6-3 thanks to a 3-run bomb from Jorge Polanco. Keep in mind the Mariners have a 1-game-to-none lead in this series. If they win today, they would head back to Seattle for 3, if necessary, at T-Mobile Park with a 2-games-to-none lead, which is truly awesome. Elsewhere, we have a double header coming up on Monday Night Football. The Buffalo Bills are at the Atlanta Falcons. That's going to be a 4:15 kick on ESPN. The Bills are favored by 3.5. Bears half. Brendan Slaughter of Beavers Edge will join me at 4:20. Bill Orm of Oregon State. Brendan Slaughter of Beavers Edge will join me at 4:20. Bill Orm of Oregon State at 5:20. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday all week. We got tickets for the home opener at 5. All right, sorry for the delay, but I've told you if Michael Shacker is going to be kind enough to play the beautiful tones of Phil Collins, I can't just talk right over his voice. It's never going to happen. I refuse to disrespect Phil in that way. Yeah, they're going to score again. Woo! This is so good. The M's now have a 7-3 lead. Suck it, Canada! This is great. The Mariners are going to take the first 2 games in Toronto. What's amazing about this, well, a lot of different things. One, the pitching performance from Miller last night. I didn't see an expression from his grill the entire game. He gave up the home run on the first pitch and then just settled in and dominated. And that was the game where they're coming off that 15-inning masterpiece on Friday. So they played like 2 games in one. Their plane gets into Toronto late, and then they go out there and take game 1. And they were taking on a team who was on fire. This is so good. It is delicious. So the Mariners right now in prime control. Don't blow this. And with their bullpen, the chances of them not converting this game into a win, very slim. And they come back to Seattle. This team's going to the World Series. They're going to the World Series, and we're going to see it happen with our own eyes. It's amazing. What a game. And what a performance today. I did not see this. I would have thought that Toronto would nut up and bounce back at home, but apparently that's not going to happen. The floodgates are now open. 7-3 M's up in Toronto right now. Wild. Dodgers, Brewers, game 1, NLCS coming up a little bit later. And the first game of this Monday Night Football doubleheader is coming up here in about 11 minutes. Bills and Falcons from the Dome down in Hotlanta. And the other thing is weird, too. Why are all these people complaining about the Monday Night Football doubleheader? And why is that a problem? I don't have a problem with it. I'm perfectly okay with watching football. And we watch multiple games at the same time on Sundays, so it's not that hard to fit in 2 on a Monday night. I just don't have a big issue with it. Give me more football. And if you got 2 games, better chances of having at least 1 good game. You know, a lot of times you have a Monday Night Football game that turns out to be a dud, and then you're like, this sucks. But now, like tonight, you got 2 would appear to be good games. Bears, Commanders, and then Bills, Falcons. So we'll see how things shake out. I want to see how the Bills' run defense does against that Falcons rushing attack. Very intrigued by that. But the Mariners right now blowing my mind. That game on Friday was absurd. It started 2 hours before the Blazer game and ended after the Blazer game was over. And it felt like the game was never going to end. And I thought the Mariners had lost the game on multiple fronts. It's great. This is great. A Dodgers-Mariners World Series would not suck, in my opinion. All right, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday coming up at 5 o'clock. If you missed me earlier, I am a man of the people, and we have Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday every day of the week this week because we want to send people to the home opener against Minnesota. And that's coming up on the 22nd. Tip time will be at 7 o'clock. That's the plan. Tomorrow, the Blazers are going to take on the Golden State Warriors. That's going to be a 7 o'clock tip. Chris Burkhart will have game day at 5 o'clock. And Burkhart will have Courtside Monday coming up tonight at 6. Brendan Slaughter is going to stop by from Beavers Edge. We'll talk about the Trent Bray firing, and we'll see what type of intel he has on potential candidates. Coaches who they might be targeting. And as I mentioned before, the best thing about firing Bray now is that it gets them out in front of this coach hire. So they bring in the firm, whoever they are, and they can start the coach search. And then you can start the back channel communication with the agents to see who may have interest. And then you have a better chance of landing a candidate that you think fits your program and what you're trying to do. So that's going to be very good. Now, Bill Orm, the one thing I want to ask him too is, what has he heard in regard to the new Pac-12 in terms of media rights deal? What type of money payout are we looking at? Is it going to be like we've seen with the Mountain West, where it's around $8 to $10 million a year? It's going to be less than that. Oregon State's just playing a different type of college football right now than some of these big boys are. Very bizarre. So the Mariners right now, 7-3 advantage on the Jays. That is incredible. Top of the 6th, 2 outs, and they've got a runner on first. I'm not sure I saw that coming. Also, Shacker was upset because the 49ers are coming apart at the seams right now. They lost yesterday to Tampa Bay. And by the way, I would have Baker Mayfield number 1 on my MVP list right now. I think the other guys that you would look at would be who? Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Oh, by the way, the Chiefs look like they might be pretty good. And you wonder why I picked the Chiefs to win the West before the season began? It's because when they have Patrick Mahomes, they have a built-in advantage every year. No matter how rough of a start they have to the season, no matter what difficulties they may have personnel-wise, Patrick Mahomes is so good that he can adjust on the fly and be able to play whatever type of game he has to play to put his team in a position to win. And if you look at the last 3 games, we're seeing the uptick in points. We're seeing the uptick in production. And yesterday, Mahomes, first game of the year with 4 touchdown passes as they took advantage of a Detroit Lions team that was decimated by injury in the secondary. And Patrick Mahomes looked great. He looked great. But I would put Baker Mayfield number 1 on my MVP list right now because of the way he's playing. He was awesome, made some great plays yesterday against the 49ers. But the 49ers right now, they're sustaining injuries at a rate that you can't overcome. Not just to normal players, but to Hall of Fame type players. And Fred Warner is one of my favorite players in the NFL. He's a really cool guy, and he's a terrific football player who's so physical and so tough. And he broke his ankle yesterday, and he was writhing in pain, and they actually set the bone right there on the field. And it was like, and then he just rode off on the cart like it was no problem. That guy's a tough dude. But what is the calculation? I did quick math on it, but so I may be off by just a few dollars. But if you look at 3 players right now, this is how bad it is for the 49ers. Between, who are the 3? So Warner, Brock Purdy, and George Kittle. Just those 3 players. And that doesn't even begin to cover their injury list, which is lengthy. And these are not just injuries where guys are banged up for a few weeks and then they're back in the lineup. These are like potential career-threatening injuries for some of these guys, like Warner. But between those 3 guys of Warner, Kittle, and Brock Purdy, they have like in guaranteed money that they've doled out to those three guys, like $287 million unavailable on the shelf because of injury. In just three guys. And I don't know when Brock Purdy's coming back. Kittle's been out since the opening game against Seattle. And now Warner's done for the year. Not to mention they don't have Joey Bosa, one of the best defensive ends in the game. It just starts to add up. Ayuk's not available. It's horrible. I've never seen a team year in and year out that just gets decimated by injury more than this team. But it starts to catch up with you because eventually when you're losing high-end players, the guys you have on the bench that you bring in, the drop-off, you can get away with it at a position, maybe two. But at some point, the quality of play is not the same, and you see the drop-off. And I think Mac Jones has been pretty good, but, I mean, he was under a lot of duress yesterday. So the 49ers, boy, the injuries are tough. Just keep that in mind. Guaranteed money, unavailable, on the shelf because of injury, $287 million because they doled out some big money this offseason. So there you have it. The 49ers in a tough spot, but Baker Mayfield, gosh, he's so good. And he's playing so well right now. And just the way that he's going about his business, more mature to a degree, but he's still cocky. He still plays with that brash arrogance, and his teammates love him. That scramble he had for a first down was amazing, and his teammates love it. And Tess Johnson, just the way he was talking about Baker after the game yesterday was impressive. They love the guy. Other things that jumped out at me, I was stunned with the Thursday night game with the Giants hammering the Eagles. Cam Scatterboo, 98 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the youth and energy that both Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterboo have brought to the lineup is impressive. The Colts got another win. They're now 5-1. And they're continuing to make me look like a moron. Daniel Jones has been great. Their defense has been great. And they're 5-1. And in control of the AFC North without question. I'm not sure what the Chargers or Dolphins were doing yesterday, but it got ugly. The Chargers were up 26-13. They looked like they got tired in the Florida sun and humidity. And they gave up back-to-back touchdown drives by the Dolphins, who took the lead 27-26. And then somehow, with like just over 30 seconds remaining, the Chargers were able to get a big play and get in field goal range and win it on a kick. They were very fortunate. The Patriots had a good win in New Orleans. Drake May, 3 touchdowns. His moxie, his movement, his toughness is impressive. Yet there we were. Cleveland is right up there with the Jets. What a dumb times in a game, but yet there we were. Cleveland is right up there with the Jets. What a dumb franchise they are. Steelers now 4-1. Aaron Rodgers looks like a normal quarterback when he's not with the Jets. Dak Prescott continues to ball out of his backside, but the Cowboys have no defense. They got lit up by the Panthers. Dowdell had 183 yards rushing. You know, the Panthers' offense is sneaky good. Huge win by the Seahawks. Sam Darnold looked awesome with 295 yards passing. Jackson Smith and Jigma looks like he might lead the league in receiving this year. The Raiders beat the Titans. Geno Smith stinks to high heaven, but the Titans are the worst coach team in football. The Packers' offense something seems off. They got the win over the Bengals. And then Patrick Mahomes was awesome in that win over the Lions. All right, when we come back, we'll get intel on Oregon State's decision to fire Trent Bray. Who are some of the guys they might be looking at to replace him? We'll talk to Brendan Slaughter coming up next on the Rip City Drive. He's with Beavers Edge. All right, they're now heading to the top of the seventh in Toronto with the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Bills and Atlanta Falcons getting ready to kick off. And joining us right now, after Oregon State fired Trent Bray and announced that Rob Akey would take over as the interim head coach, it's Brendan Slaughter of Beavers Edge here on the show. And Brendan, I appreciate the time. Just your initial reaction to the decision to fire Coach Bray now.
Chad, what's going on, my man? Good to be on. It definitely caught me by surprise on Sunday morning. Just I think like most people, right? I was at the press conference Saturday night after the, disappointing Wake Forest loss, and in numerous respects, from the lack of fan support to the lack of a competitive showing on the field. But even in Trent Bray's press conference, he got asked about his job security, and it didn't seem like it was something he was overly worried about. And we kind of figured as a Beavers Edge staff that maybe there'd be another, coordinator change, something, tweaking like that, but not necessarily Bray at this point. But nevertheless, it happened, and now Oregon State finds themselves in need of a new leader, which obviously speeds up the process of everything, and it's definitely a busy time, and I'm excited to see what names ultimately pop up on the coaching trail.
Did this decision come from Scott Barnes, or was it donor driven?
I think it was a collaboration of both. I think Scott Barnes, um, he was seeing some things on the field. Obviously, the Beavers were regressing. You talk about the 13 out of the last 14 losses. The fact that, despite having some tough schedule early on, things weren't really trending in the right direction. And then you talk about Wake Forest, which was probably Oregon State's worst performance of the year from top to bottom. And then, as we saw in Scott Barnes's email that he sent out to the media, that Bray's buyout will be 100% funded through donor generated funds. And Chad, if we're being honest, that tells me that the money, and you talk about a program like Oregon State, if you're in danger of potentially losing some of your big boosters, if they're demanding change, it kind of forces your hand, so to speak. So I think there were a culmination of factors for sure, but just knowing what I have heard behind the scenes, I'm sure the boosters played a role in this, considering they had the buyout money ready to go.
So, through your time being around the team and having a chance to watch over the last couple of years, what are some of the things that led to the struggles for Coach Bray that led to his firing?
Yeah, I think just going back, some things were out of his control and he was dealt a tough hand, right? Like Oregon State going into an independent 2 years, he couldn't control that. Jonathan Smith taking a good bit of, coaches and talent with him to East Lansing, not something he could particularly control. And I think, if you want to go back to kind of the thing that I think ultimately was one of the things that Trent Bray and maybe others would have some regret in how he went about it, was there wasn't enough experience on the coaching staff beside Trent Bray as a first-time head coach. I mean, you're talking about Ryan Gunderson being a first-time offensive coordinator, Trent Bray, bringing in Keith Hayward to run the defense, but he was a defensive assistant with the Raiders before he came to Oregon State. So we're bringing in so many new coaching pieces, and I think maybe like an established previous head coach as like an offensive coordinator probably would have helped even things out a little bit. I think, Bray moving off of his defensive coordinator and then, taking over this last year, that kind of spoke volumes a little bit about just kind of him wanting to maintain control. So I think staffing could have been better, but I think at the same token, he was put in a tough spot where being independent, the schedule the Beavers had the last 2 years, it was hard. And, whoever the next coach is going to have the benefit of being ushered into the new, Pac-12, which will have much more, familiarity and a lot less travel. But, I think it was a culmination of factors. I think, Bray would do some things over differently. I think he probably could have been supported by the AD a little bit better too. But ultimately, this is where we find ourselves now. So it's crazy to think that a tenure could end after just, 1.5 seasons. I can certainly remember when coaches got 3, 4, 5 years to do this, Chad. And I think in today's world of the transfer portal and the expectation of things now, I just don't think there's quite as much patience as there used to be.
We're talking with Brendan Slaughter, Beavers Edge, here on the Rip City Drive. What can you tell us about Rob Akey, who's going to take over as interim in a very challenging spot?
Yeah, I gotta give it to Rob Akey. Definitely came into the press conference today with a lot of fire. Chad, Trent Bray, and even going back to Jonathan Smith, their Monday press conferences were, 10, 15 minutes in length, short, sweet, to the point. Rob Akey comes out and I think speaks for 30 minutes today. Full of energy, excited to, kind of change the narrative. It's an opportunity for him as well to, I don't think he's ultimately going to be a serious contender in Oregon State's coaching search, but say Oregon State, rattled off 4 or 5 wins in the final, 5 games of the season, which is not outlandish. I think, there'd be some thought there. So I think my initial thoughts have been he's going to bring a new energy. I really liked, Chad, that he made some calculated moves today. Obviously, he announced some coaching changes. Bray was the defensive coordinator and the linebackers coach, so he named a new linebackers coach and Mark Kreiner, co-defensive coordinators in Eliza Tuiaki, who was formerly BYU's defensive coordinator, and Rod Chance. And then perhaps what I think was the biggest statement ahead of Lafayette, he took play calling duties offensively away from Ryan Gunderson. Ryan Gunderson will coach quarterbacks for Lafayette. Danny Langsdorf will call plays, former Oregon State OC under Mike Riley for many years. So it's, he didn't indicate whether the OC, shift is permanent or just for Lafayette this weekend. But when you consider, Chad, just how difficult the last few weeks had been and really offensively for Oregon State, you just had to shake some things up. And I definitely think Oregon State fans will be happy to see that, Coach Akey's not just going to quietly let this season go into the night. They're going to fight the final 5 weeks and, ultimately see what happens. And in an interim coach in his position, I think he's handling it about as good as you could ask for him.
Well, one thing you might be able to answer in today's college football landscape, what are the advantages of making the move now by firing Trent Bray?
Yeah, I think there are advantages for sure. And you talk about, Chad, 2 years ago, it was around this time in the calendar, maybe a week later, when Michigan State started to poke around and ask about Jonathan Smith because Mel Tucker had obviously been dismissed early in the process and so on and so forth. So there is an advantage to, moving on, making that clean break, having your interim coach the rest of the season and getting the tires kicked, so to speak, on names out there because the reality is I believe 7 or 6 players that are left in Oregon State's recruiting class. It's hard to know whether they'll hang on to any of those guys. Largely, Oregon State's recruiting class, I would imagine, is going to be built through the transfer portal, and largely whatever recruiting class is attached to what coach they're going to hire right now. And that's kind of the benefit is, say you go out and hire an established head coach somewhere, you're going to largely probably bring in a lot of his recruiting class too, or transfers from his school, like we've seen at other schools recently as well. So there is that benefit to it as well. And then we've heard that it's going to be a collaborative process between Scott Barnes, a search firm, and a collection of Oregon State internal, external players. And I think they realize that in kind of this really delicate space of college football as it relates to where Oregon State's place is, they have to nail this hire, Chad. Like after this and after Jonathan Smith left him, and then now having a couple rough years as independents, moving into the new conference, the pressure is going to be on the athletic department to really nail this hire.
I agree with that. What are some of the names you're hearing right now that may have interest?
Yeah, right off the bat, we heard 3 names to keep an eye on over at beaversedge.com. And, obviously the first is going to be Montana State head coach Brett Vegan. He is someone who's really developed a strong reputation. He's 51-12 across 4.5 seasons with Montana State at the FCS level. We've seen coaches, in recent years make that FCS to FBS jump and be successful. And I think the thing that Oregon State, would be impressed by is, he's made an FCS championship game. He's worked under Craig Bull back at North Dakota State. So he's definitely a proven FCS winner that I think would appeal to Oregon State, as is Tim Plough over at UC Davis. He was a former quarterback for the Aggies, and he's kind of risen up the coaching ranks. Most notably, only his second year at UC Davis last year. In his first year, took them 11-3. They went to the FCS quarterfinals. And then last but not least, the name we're hearing is Jason Eck down at New Mexico. interesting thing with Jason Eck is that obviously he made a name for himself these last few years at Idaho, took the job at New Mexico. However, we are hearing that if Wisconsin decides to move on from Luke Fickell, the Wisconsin alumni Eck would most likely be atop Wisconsin's um, coaching search. So that's something to consider as well. And we've obviously got some more names over at beaversedge.com and highly encourage everyone to check it out. But those three have kind of been the three that have been at the top so far. If you're asking me personally, Chad, I think they have to go just with somebody who has kind of some swagger and an X factor on the recruiting trail. And I think, we've seen some programs that have, kind of gone all in with that kind of recruiter mentality. And I think, you have to figure out how to do more with less at Oregon State. And there are plenty of coaches across the country who kind of fit that bill. So it's going to be interesting to see which names ultimately rise up in the conversation.
All right, final question for you, Brendan. What type of attrition do you anticipate in the portal?
Yeah, I think it's going to be sizable. I mean, I think, you talk about obviously a lot of this roster was built by Trent Bray and this staff. If you were to ask me what my gut feeling is, Chad, I think they're going to bring in, a new coach and bring in an entirely new staff. I don't think there will be a lot of, if any, holdover in any department. So in that sense, there's probably going to be a good amount of movement. As far as specific names, it's too early to say. We haven't heard anyone be like, hey, I'm done. I'm getting ready to go. Those conversations could be happening. We'll obviously be on top of that. But yeah, I would certainly expect, Oregon State to lose some key pieces to the portal. But the upside of what we talked about is, while you'll lose some pieces, you'll be able to bring in some pieces because you've got a long runway to be able to hire a coach and bring in, his class, transfer portal, all that too. So, there's attrition every year. It might be a little bit more this year, but I think when you consider where Oregon State was headed, regardless of whether or not they made a change this season, Chad, I think it would have still been a pretty rough portal at the end of the year.
All right, be sure to check out beaversedge.com. They're going to have their coaching hot board up. So if you want to know the complete list of names and people to keep an eye on as this coaching search gets underway, go to beaversedge.com. It's Brendan Slaughter from Beavers Edge joining us here on the RipCityDrive. Hey, Brendan, I appreciate it, buddy. Good work, and we'll catch up soon.
Appreciate it, Chet. Anytime, my man. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
You got it. There you go. There is the latest from Brendan Slaughter. Telephone number here, 503-248-0620. While we were having the discussion with Brendan, Josh Naylor hit a 2-run bomb, and now it's top of the 7th in Toronto. The Mariners lead the Blue Jays 9-3. And there's only one out, and they've got a runner on first. So the Mariners trying to add more. This is unbelievable. The Mariners are going to go back home with a 2-0 lead and in full control of the ALCS, especially in the 2-3-2 format. Rivas is at the plate right now. He came up in spades on Friday night. Unreal. And right now the Falcons and Bills tied up at 7 in Monday Night Football. The Ducks fell victim to the Indiana Hoosiers on Saturday. Physically dominated at the point of attack. Great coaching job by Coach Cignetti of the Hoosiers. Indiana is not just a really good team, they're a legit national championship contender. I mean, they showed their worth in that game on Saturday. Let's go out and talk to Raider Mike, who wanted to talk about the Ducks. Raider Mike, what was your reaction to the Ducks going down to the Hoosiers?
Oh, dude, I had to be in a bar when that happened. A bar I sang at twice that weekend. It was rough, bro. It was rough. I have not lost faith in the Ducks, but I have faith in these Mariners. Watching them right now. You got the screen on there, bro?
I'm watching the game right now.
You see Josh?
Yeah, I just saw him hit the bomb. 2-run bomb, 9-3.
Dude, you know I'm an A, but when they're in Sacramento, I'm a Mariner. I mean, I grew up in Vancouver. When they came in the league, 75, 76, everyone's against me. All of a sudden, oh, Mariners rock. Mariners, no, you suck. You don't suck anymore. Do not choke this, Mariners. This is a good ride, and my Blazers are finally, I think, going to be good again. So there's some good and bad things. I mean, I rushed the field. Did I cost that guy his job when I incited that riot at Appalachian State last week? Is that what happened?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But yeah.
I wasn't there.
I told the kids to rush the field. Oh, I was. So was Parker. So was Shaq. And they wouldn't let me go up and just shake their hands and say hi. I grew up on Parker. Just want to shake his hand. Let me up there. No, Raider Mike. Go down with the students. Anyway, that's all. I don't know, dude. I don't know. And then your Rockies played the Mets or the Yankees in London. That might have been worse. I woke up with a hangover of singing for 2 nights straight.
I know. It was unwatchable football, Raider Mike. The Jets and Broncos was terrible. It's not the type of game you want to send overseas if you're trying to expand your game and make it global. Mariners now have the bases loaded with 1 out, top of the 7th, trying to add to the 2-run bomb from Josh Naylor. It's incredible. Julio Rodriguez, 3-run homer. Polanco, 3-run homer. And Josh Naylor, a 2-run homer. Coming in the 1st, 5th, and 7th inning. Truly impressive. Wow. Mariners are on fire. All right, we got Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday coming up at 5. We have tickets every 20. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. 520. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can always listen live and podcast the show via our free iHeartRadio app. And you can check us out on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, pull up our homepage, Rip City Radio 620. You can watch the live stream. You can catch up on old shows. And make sure you like and subscribe to the page. So Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday coming up at 5. Your chance to get tickets for the opener. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Gino came through with a sack fly, and the Mariners have added another run. They still have 2 on with 2 outs at top of the 7th in Toronto. It's 10-3 Mariners right now. Home runs from Julio, from Polanco, and from Naylor have powered the Mariners offense. This is awesome. They now head to the 8th. They're 6 outs away from awesome. Bills and Falcons tied up at 7 right now. And Bills and Falcons tied up at 7 right now. And no, I do not know what Raider Mike was talking about. I love Raider Mike. Like, he's my guy. But sometimes when he calls in, his thoughts do not match up with what the call screener says his thoughts are going to be on the show. I thought he wanted to talk about the Ducks getting worked by Indiana, but then he started rambling about Appalachian State again. I love you, Raider Mike. 503-248-0620. A couple of different pieces of audio I want you to hear. As you know, I'm a big fan of Kenny Dillingham, former offensive coordinator at Oregon, now the head coach at his alma mater at Arizona State University. He is young. He is energetic. He is innovative in the way he approaches things, the way he works with his players who want to transfer out. He's embraced the new age of college football and guys getting paid. He doesn't run from anything. And here he is talking about accountability after his team got physically manhandled by the Utah Utes. How many teams don't get physically manhandled by a Kyle Whittingham coach team? Kyle Whittingham is one of the toughest football coaches in America. And I respect him a great deal. I love Kyle Whittingham. And they just moved guys at the line of scrimmage on Saturday night. It was pretty impressive. But here's Kenny Dillingham talking about accountability and what it means to him.
So to me in college football, the word outcoached, every time we lose, we get outcoached. Because we don't have a GM, right? So me personally, every loss that we have, I'm responsible for every single person in this organization. So it doesn't matter if we miss a tackle or if there's a bad scheme or if they get us schematically. It's outcoached. Like, that's how I view it, is the extreme ownership of I have brought in every single person into this organization. So if we miss a tackle or if we don't make a play or if we have a bad scheme or something like that, that all falls on me. So maybe outcoached isn't always the perfect term, but at the end of the day, everything always falls on me. So when we have failures or we don't hit an expectation for a multitude of reasons, it's my fault. That's what I mean by outcoached, is there's nowhere else to, like, who else do I look at? Everybody's here because of me, right? Which means everything falls on me, and it should. Like, every bad thing ever said about this program should fall directly on me, not our players, because I brought them here. That's our job to put them in the best position to succeed. And that 100% is on me. So that's what I mean by when I say that.
That's a perfect answer. And how can you not love that guy for the way he approaches things? He's not going to point the finger at other people for mistakes that are made within his program. Now, the other one I want you to hear is from Dan Campbell. Hard not to love Dan Campbell, head coach of the Lions. They got worked last night by the Chiefs at Arrowhead. I don't feel bad, Coach. It happens to a lot of people when you're taking on Patrick Mahomes, who had 4 touchdowns last night. And the Chiefs, they're not going anywhere. They got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. They're like the ultimate cockroach. There's nothing you can put on them, spray on them, or any type of disaster that's going to prevent them from doing what they do, which is win football games. Because Patrick Mahomes is a bad boy. And he's the best player on the planet, period. Well, after the game, Brian Branch, they got in one of those, I don't know, like handshake lines on the field. Like we see in basketball games. You don't see it too often in football. Guys just roll up on different dudes. But there was a bit of a handshake line at the end of the Chiefs game. And I look at those lines kind of like I do, like the cheerleaders, not cheerleaders, but the gymnasts with the fake hugs and stuff. When they really don't want to be hugging the person, but they do and pretend like they care about how well they did on the uneven bars or whatever they're doing. Well, they have one of those lines, but Brian Branch dissed Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes put his hand out to give him a high five, and Branch just denied him. And Juju Smith-Schuster took an exception to that, and then that started an after-the-game melee on the field. Dan Campbell was asked about Branch after the game. This is what he had to say.
I love Brian Branch, but what he did is inexcusable, and it's not going to be accepted here. It's not what we do. It's not what we're about. I apologize to Coach Reed and the Chiefs, and and shoot. That's not okay. That's not what we do here, and it's not going to be okay. He knows it. Our team knows it, and so that's not what we do.
It's not what we do. I love that. Dan Campbell's as competitive as anybody in football, and he wants to win dearly, and he was bitter after that game, but he's not going to turn down a handshake from Patrick Mahomes. So, anyways, it's not a big deal. Brian Branch will live and learn, and he has been impacted by the NFL. I think they suspended him a game for creating that melee. It's like, dude, it's Patrick Mahomes, for crying out loud. What are you doing? Patrick Mahomes is one of the coolest guys in the NFL, and Branch suspended one game for the fight. And it makes sense because if that would have gone down before the game, the NFL absolutely would have thrown him out, and he would not have been able to participate in that game last night. So it's that simple. It is what it is. When Patrick Mahomes wants to give you a high five and say, good game, then you do it. That's all. It's Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, it sucks you got beat. It sucks that you were down like 5 or 6 guys in the secondary, and he torched you for 4 touchdowns. But it's just called sportsmanship. And the NFL this year is, they're going to do an extra focus on sportsmanship. They want guys, how the NFL is. They don't want guys to have fun. They don't like, they're allowing some celebration and stuff, which is good. But the lack of sportsmanship, they're not going to go for it. They're just not. They're going to protect the shield. And if you're going to be a dum-dum, they're going to drop the hammer on you. Just like guys who spit on Dak Prescott before games or right at the start of a game. You're out of there. Sorry, you cannot spit on the quarterback or anyone for that fact. But I just love hearing coaches take accountability. Dan Campbell's like, that's not what we do. That's not what we're about. Dan Campbell's cool.
I love Brian Branch, but what he did is inexcusable, and it's not going to be accepted here. It's not what we do. It's not what we're about. I apologize to Coach Reed and the Chiefs, and and shoot. That's not okay. That's not what we do here, and it's not going to be okay. He knows it. Our team knows it, and so that's not what we do.
I love that. Dan Campbell's cool, and Detroit's like the people's champ. They're like Rocky. They're like the underdog team in America. I think a lot of people would like to see the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl. And for me, I don't believe anyone deserves anything in sports. You got to go out and earn it. So when I hear that, like, oh, they deserve a chance to get in the Super Bowl. No, you got to go out and earn it. And if you don't earn it, you don't deserve it. That's the way I look at it. But a lot of people are different when it comes to Detroit or teams that have been so bad for so long. Like, do the Seattle Mariners deserve to be in the World Series? Because they've stunk for most of their franchise's existence? No. They've got to go out and earn it, which they're doing right now with a 10-3 lead, bottom of the 7 in Toronto. 2 outs, 1 on, 7-run lead. And now the 7th is over. They are now 6 outs away from taking a 2-0 lead, which is awesome. Third down for the Falcons. 3rd and goal for the Falcons. That game, Bills-Falcons tied up at 7 in Atlanta. Michael Penix, they got his name spelled right on the broadcast, which is important, just threw a touchdown. 14-7 Falcons. Or 13-7 with the extra point pending. And basically what I've seen from some of these kickers on the extra point, nothing is a given ever since they moved that back just a bit. All right, coming up next, I'm a man of the people, and I'm going to give tickets away to you. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, every day of the week. Your chance at tickets for the openers coming up next. And then at 6 o'clock, Chris Burkhart will have Courtside Monday here on the Rip City Drive. Have a 10-3 lead. Top of the eighth. Have a 10-3 lead. Top of the eighth. They are 6 outs away from going up 2-0 in the ALCS. Coming back to Seattle for 3 games. An impressive performance. Home runs from Naylor, Polanco, and Julio, which has powered the offense. Right now, Monday Night Football. First game is underway in Atlanta. The Falcons on top of the Bills by a score of 14-7. And coming up in just a few minutes, the Bears are in D.C. to take on the Commanders. Right now, Washington is a 5.5-point favorite. Bill Oram from the Oregonian going to join me at 5:20 to talk Oregon State and their decision to fire Trent Bray. But up next on the Rip City Drive with me, it's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. Every day this week, we have a pair of tickets for the home opener against Minnesota to give away, and we're going to do it now. All right, Chris Burkhart, who's got courtside coming up at 6, is going to join me here in just a couple of moments to talk some Ducks coming off that stunning loss to Indiana at Autzen. But right now, we have tickets to give away. This is a pair of tickets for the home opener against Minnesota, which is coming up on the 22nd, which is a week from Wednesday. I have tickets to give away for the opener throughout the entire week. So Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday is now Trailblazer Ticket every day this week. Because I care about you and I love people. And I am a man of the people, so I'm going to do it right now. I want you to fire away with your calls. We'll see if Shacker can hang with this. We'll take caller number 31, 503-248-0620, 503-248-0620. I want to hear from a Blazer fan. 503-248-0620. Fire away right now. And Michael Shacker will get your information. 503-248-0620. And if you don't win today, if you're not caller 31, no problem. You just check back with me throughout the course of the week. All right, in studio now is my good friend and partner, Chris Burkhart, who's got Courtside Monday coming up at 6. He'll be on game day tomorrow at 5, ahead of the Warriors and Trailblazers from Moda Center. Let's talk some Duck football. I got to be honest with you. Like, what happened on Saturday was not something I saw coming. I was stunned because I didn't think Indiana could measure up man for man. And yet, throughout the course of the game, from start until finish, they dominated at the point of the attack on both sides of the football. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, that was a good game. That was a good game from Indiana. Signetti coached his ass off. They played incredibly well. I think really, though, you look at that game, I don't think the offensive line played terribly. I think if you go break down the film and you look at that, they played well enough. Dante Moore was making some really bad reads. He felt like he was uncomfortable the whole time. And the biggest thing that really threw him off was Indiana did an absolutely phenomenal job disguising their coverages, faking him out. And he wasn't changing the schemes. Like, you got to go in there, see those blitzes, adjust the blocking schemes. Because everyone will sit there and go, oh, the lineman missed the lineman did what he was supposed to do. If there's no adjustment, how's that his fault? You know what I mean? And I thought no, Whittington missed some key blocks in the backfield as well. So it was just an all just out of whack game. And kudos to Indiana, because going into Hodson and playing like that and shutting the Ducks down is hard to do.
It is. It's really hard to do. That's why it was such an impressive win. And I think now the best win of any team on the season. And it helped, too, that they got early pressure on Moore. So, like, right from the start, they got on him and got him a couple of hits and made him uncomfortable. And I don't think Moore has experienced that type of discomfort throughout the course of the season. So, right away, you get him guessing. And then with the disguises you mentioned, they just had him off balance. And then on top of that, Indiana was able to thwart the Ducks' running game, which surprised me as well.
What really irritated me about that is some of this is just the play calling was weird to me, Chad, because during that game, if they were running up the middle with Davidson, they were gashing them 5-6 yards at a time. And then they tried to run outside, and it was a hit at the line or for a yard loss. Like, stop trying to beat him around the edge. Just keep running up the middle. And I think one thing that's coming out of this game, and I know Jeff Schwartz has talked about it a lot, and I've seen some fans start to talk about it. I kind of agree. I think you need to settle, if you're Dan Lanning, as nice it was early in the year to have a running back by committee, I think you need to settle on who is running back 1 and running back 2. No more of this 4 or 5 guys coming in. Let one guy get in a rhythm and just lean on him, and I don't think Noah Whittington's the guy.
Well, I just believe that with running backs, they need a few carries. Like some guys need, 15 to 20 carries before they really get into that rhythm, right, of the game and how it's being played, the blocking scheme. They get into that rhythm and they can really start to pick up some big yards. And if running backs are coming in for a couple of plays and going back off the field, I think for a lot of those guys, it's hard because they're used to carrying the bulk of the load, right? And when they don't get that, it's hard for them to get into that that flow of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you need. So I wouldn't be surprised or shocked or upset if they ended up kind of giving it to 1-2 guys, letting them go. But yeah, it's always tough when you lose. But the thing is, Chad, I think that's the type of game that there is so much tape already that the average Joe like you and I can look at and see where mistakes were made. So you absolutely know that Dan Lanning and all those guys are going to see it too. There is a lot of plays in that game where Dante felt rushed out of the pocket and missed wide open guys that would have been absolute easy touchdowns. But it was just so weird because he hasn't played like that a lot, where he's felt timid or felt scared. It was very quick, either quick throws or get out of the pocket. Mendoza had a play, man, where I loved it. I loved it, where the pocket starts to collapse. And collapse is a weird word because if the edges are starting to come in on you, that doesn't mean your pocket's collapsing. They're creating your pocket. So what does he do? He steps into it, and as he throws the ball, they're crashing on him, but he hits the wide open receiver because he did not panic whatsoever.
And it's so important for quarterbacks, and you see young quarterbacks in the NFL struggle with this. When you start to feel what you're talking about there with the collapsing, step up. It's counterintuitive because you're stepping into the madness, but right in the middle of the eye of the storm sometimes buys you a couple extra seconds to deliver the football. And as you're going through your progressions, if you step up, a lot of times you'll pick the receiver that breaks open at the last moment.
Yeah, like who had an absolutely incredible couple plays over the weekend doing that? One of them to Tez Johnson. Baker Mayfield. It's stepping into the pocket with the rush coming down on him, and it bought him that extra half second to get into the throw, find the open receiver.
Oh, that throw was money, too.
Oh, it was beautiful.
On the money. And Tez Johnson with a somersault backflip, and he stuck the landing. I was like, geez,
right.
Must be nice.
Right, but that's what you need to do. And if Dante would have done that, it would have bought him that extra second to see those open receivers.
But here's the beauty of college football now with the playoff expansion, the way it should be. You can lose a game. You can lose 2 games. The loss to Indiana doesn't matter. You got beat by a team that was just better you on that day. So now the coaches will get the attention of the players, and you can refocus and continue to work on the details to get better as the season moves along. The only thing you may have a difficult pathway to get into now is the Big Ten title game because of the tie breaks. But everything that you want is still out in front of you because you're going to have access to the playoff if you handle your business.
Yeah, absolutely you are. The Big Ten thing, like Indiana's got a pretty good schedule the rest of the way, as does Ohio State. It's kind of theirs to lose at this point. But you look at last year, Ohio State was 4th in the Big Ten. Indiana was 3rd, and Penn State and Oregon played in the championship game. Then Ohio State goes and wins the national championship. Now last year, Ohio State was a force to be reckoned with. Don't know if Oregon is there quite yet, but the whole point remains. The season is not over. And the fact that Oregon fell to 8, they're still in an absolute perfect spot. You're still top 10, meaning somewhere down the line, if you stumble again, you still have a chance to get in. It gets a little fainter, but you still have a chance.
I agree. There's no shame in losing to one of the top teams in the country. And if you finish a year with 1 loss, the committee's going to look favorably on that. It's like, yeah, they lost to Indiana, who beat everyone.
I think that's the hard part for people to comprehend here, myself included, is because if you lose to Michigan, you lose to Ohio State. Those names have been good forever. Even if you lose to Penn State, you're like, oh, well, it's Penn State. You're not used to Indiana being just a juggernaut. And they keep in mind, they were good last year, Chad. They were really good last year. And then they went and faced a top 10 team in Illinois and just dropped 100 on them. So losing to Indiana feels weird because you're not used to them being good, but they're really good.
The turnaround in less than 2 years at Indiana under Coach Signetti, there needs to be a 30 for 30 on it because it's even more remarkable than what we understand. He took over a program that had nothing. It's a basketball school. They don't have the resources that a lot of these other big-time football programs do. And yet he took them to the playoff last year, found better players. They're better this year and sturdier this year. And they're a threat. They're a legitimate national championship threat now. It's amazing. But what he's done is unbelievable. And now I'm thinking to myself, this is not sustainable what Coach Cignetti's doing at Indiana. So if I'm Penn State, I'm taking a plane, filling it to the brim with cash, and flying it to Bloomington so that after the year you can be like, hey, why don't you come back home, my friend? You're from Pennsylvania. You got ties. You just write how many zeros you want in the check, and it's yours.
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast nowadays in college football. And
because he'll never get hotter than what he is right now, and he's 64. He won't be able to keep up this pace at Indiana, so why not cash in one last time?
Yeah, I think that as good as Indiana is, you're right. That when Penn State comes calling right now, yeah, I think you have to definitely blank check, man. Don't even tell me how many zeros on it. I'll find out when I go check my bank account after you deposit it.
$50 million to walk away. Some booster was like, hey, I've seen enough. I'll pay for the cost. We got to make a change. It's that simple. I mean, look how quickly it unraveled for James Franklin. Overtime loss to Oregon, road loss to UCLA, then you lose to Northwestern at home. You're done. And he's been very successful as a coach. But in today's game, with the portal and with how much money donors are now contributing, because you're going to your fans and your donors saying, we need more, we need more, we need more. Okay, that's fine. But if I'm going to give you many millions of dollars, then I want to know where the results are at. And James Franklin's time had run out. And it's probably good for both sides. Time to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And he had a very good run there. I wouldn't give up on Dan Lanning yet, but that's not year 13 or whatever it was for James Franklin. And with Franklin, too, this is why I'm still okay with Oregon taking that loss and see what happens, because the loss doesn't matter to me, Chad. It's next week and how you rebound, how you answer that loss, because that's what separates good teams from bad teams.
Yeah.
And Penn State did not answer a tough loss 2 weeks in a row.
You're right.
They couldn't rebound. So how does Oregon look after a tough loss is what matters more than what happened in Autzen on Saturday.
You're right. And if they come out and respond and win big, then everything's going to be just fine. Even if you struggle a bit but overcome and win, then you responded. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And it's not watching film, but you and I were talking about it, about crutch words and things you do on radio. It's listening to yourself or getting feedback is like watching film.
Yeah.
You give me feedback. It's unfortunate, like, oh, man, I missed the wide open receiver type thing, but I learned from that, and you find ways to get better. I'm fully confident that Dante Moore will do the exact same thing and understand, oh, if I stepped up in the pocket, I could have got that rather than doing what I did or what I thought was comfortable.
They're still the same team before the Indiana game started. Same team with the same talent, the same great quarterback, the same coaching staff. They're not any different.
No.
They just got caught, and I think part of it, too, the Ducks are a young team. You win a huge game at Penn State in overtime on national TV, going into a bye week. My guess is their focus level may have been just a little bit off getting ready for Indiana.
But here's the thing. Humble pie does not taste good. Here's the thing. Humble pie does not taste good. It might be the worst flavor out there, but it's probably the best thing for your diet. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I got you. All right, Chris Burkhardt, courtside Monday coming up at 6. Good to see you, my friend.
Always.
Bill Oram, he was down in Corvallis today. What did he learn? Is it chaotic? Are they at peace with the decision? And who might they be looking at next for a head coach at Oregon State? Bill Oram, Oregonian, coming up next on the Rip City Drive. All right, Rip City Drive, very happy to welcome onto the show once again the columnist from the Oregonian who is on his way back from Corvallis. It's Bill Orem here on the Rip City Drive. And, Bill, they just fired their head coach. And I will ask you this. You were just in Corvallis. How would you describe the scene? Was it chaotic or not so much? What's your takeaway?
You know, I think that I would describe the scene almost as upbeat, right? Like there's been such a cloud over the Beavers through these first 7 weeks where it's gone from bad to worse and worse and worse and worse seemingly by the week. You know, being 0-7 puts a huge weight on a team, on a university. And so I think that there was sort of a, you know, just the relief of being able to hit reset. You know, you know, Rob Akey is the interim head coach, and he's a, you know, grizzled veteran of the sidelines, you'd say. And, you know, he did a good job of putting it kind of in perspective. He said, yesterday was the funeral. We're all sad about Trent. Yesterday was the funeral, but today is about, you know, getting ready for Lafayette on Saturday and getting better and, you know, laying the foundation for whoever's going to come in here and do the head job, you know, in the future. And I thought that was good perspective. I think Akey is probably the right kind of presence for this job. It's a tough situation to come in and be the interim guy with only 5 games left in the season. But, you know, Akey, I thought, you know, kind of painted as rosy of a picture as you could of trying to, like, you know, give these guys something to play for in the final 5 games. You know, Scott Barnes laid out his vision a little bit of what he's looking for in a head coach going forward. You know, this is a big moment for Oregon State to get this right, to make the right hire that is going to allow them to sort of make the splash in this new Pac-12 next year that they, you know, kind of need to make. And, you know, that's the challenge, is like, how do you recover from this and get on the right foot immediately? Because I mean, college football is constantly changing, and if Oregon State is down for too long, you know, there's a risk of, you know, getting left behind again. So very curious to see what happens, you know, in the long term in terms of the coaching hire, but just in terms of getting the kind of, you know, removing that weight of the will they or won't they of firing Trent Bray, you know, that's now been answered, and can focus on just getting through these final 5 weeks.
We're talking with Bill Orem, Oregonian, here on the Rip City Drive. Trent Bray was fired over the weekend by Oregon State as their head football coach. Is there an advantage to making the move now as you begin your coaching search? Meaning, if you have your eye on maybe a few different candidates, you can start the back channeling.
Yeah, that's one thing that that Scott Barnes talked about, right? Like, you know, they're going to hire a search firm, which is going to allow, you know, the search firm can do some of that sort of connecting, right, between Oregon State and agents, check the temperature of some of the coaches who are still out there coaching, lay some of the groundwork, like you said, the back channeling. You know, I think the more time Oregon State has to consider their options and to be very intentional with a plan is an asset. And, you know, the coaching search 2 years ago, in as much as there was a coaching search, was one of the most necessarily hurried processes you're ever going to see. You know, they needed a head coach before the transfer portal opened, as the conference was crumbling. You know, all of that logic made sense. In reality, they were probably never going to save that roster. You know, it was probably the time to zero base everything and find somebody who's going to build it from the ground up the right way. But there was so much happening in that moment. Like, you can't blame them for making the choice they made. But once it becomes clear that you have the wrong head coach and you have to start over, you probably need to start the process of starting over as quickly as possible. And so I think, you know, I obviously wrote that they needed to make this change a month ago because it was apparent that this was a disorganized team that was heading in the wrong direction. But, you know, this is when they decided to do it. You know, to their credit, at least it happened. And, you know, I guess we'll see. But I do think that, you know, the work for them has already started in terms of identifying the right replacement.
Is Oregon State a more attractive job today compared to a couple of years ago, with at least knowing they're a part of a conference, the Pac-12, which is newly reformed and will begin play in this new conference next year? Does that help them?
No question. I mean, 2 years ago, you know, the uncertainty had to be a deterrent to any potential candidates. Again, they lasered in on Trent so quickly that we didn't really get to see what that process would look like or who the interested parties might really end up being. But, if you think of Oregon State more as like a mid-major as opposed to a Pac-12 school that has fallen down a notch, I mean, you're in a conference with Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, Washington State. Like, in theory, it's in position to be, one of the top group of 5 conferences and have a great shot at one of those playoff spots, that group of 5 playoff spot in the 12-team playoff. So, I think that path makes it more attractive. Scott Barnes has been adamant that they're going to invest, at a level that is at the top of the Pac-12. Remains to be seen what that actually looks like. But, what are you going to pay a football coach? Trent Bray was making $2 million. Jonathan Smith was making $6 million. So it's, what are you going to, now that you've sort of adjusted to the realities of where you are, what is that going to look like? Who are you going to be able to get? How are you going to fund this program? So I think that the stability the conference provides makes it a lot more attractive. Certainly not as attractive as it was when it was in the Pac-12. That was sort of the thing that elevated Oregon State over the schools like Boise State, Utah State, Colorado State. Now they're the same. I mean, that feels like that's direct competition, but the stability is a huge thing.
Hey, Bill, have you heard anything in terms of dollars for payouts, or at least what the new Pac-12 hopes to have in terms of a media deal? And the reason why I asked the question is I'm trying to gauge how difficult it will be for Oregon State to be able to compete moving forward in NIL dollars.
I don't have the answer, Chad. I kind of hate to speculate, but I think that, you look at what the Mountain West has done historically, which I think is around $8 million, if that sounds right. I probably a pretty good target, or maybe a little higher. But Oregon State and Washington State have always had great viewership numbers, so that's certainly something to go and sell. Being in the Pacific time zone obviously is very appealing to media partners. So, I don't know the number, don't want to speculate, but it's going to be a real belt tightening. And from the NIL, revenue share standpoint, we haven't seen yet what they're actually able to do in terms of rev share. And that's going to be the big question. It's like nobody in this new Pac-12 is expected to be able to get to the $20.5 million, but that the House settlement provides for. But, Oregon State, can they get 10? Can they get to 15? How aggressive and how competitive can they be? And a lot of that's going to depend on, how aggressive their donors are willing to be. Scott Barnes said today that the money that they raised to pay Trent's buyout, that was also part of a raise for revenue share. And so, they are constantly trying to bring in new dollars from boosters. It's not a huge booster base, like some other programs in the state, but there are a dedicated handful of boosters who are getting pretty big checks at Oregon State.
We're talking with Bill Oram, Oregonian, here on the Rip City Drive. Do you know any details on why Kyle Bjornstad stepped down? And, of course, we've seen some issues around the country with Blueprint, the company that they have partnered with for their NIL, dollar-generating business. Arkansas, severed their relationship. Do you know what's going on there?
Yeah. I have not talked to Kyle. Other people have, so I don't want to speak for Kyle. But my view on it, and from conversations I've had, is I think maybe just a disconnect over what the job he had was versus what he thought it would be or what he wanted. They put him in a pretty narrow role of executing the contracts for revenue sharing with athletes. I think he envisioned a more expansive, general manager type role in the athletic department. It was not an in-house job. He's an external contractor. I think that was maybe a source of conflict as well. But, I think, again, growing pains as all of this is implemented. I mean, this is all new stuff. The revenue sharing is in its infancy. NIL, which was the motor behind the whole thing. It was the one mechanism to pay players over the last few years. Now that's a much smaller piece of the pie. It is absolutely fascinating to watch other schools part ways with Blueprint. I have spent a lot of time trying to understand the Blueprint situation, and I'll be honest, I think it's fine. Like, I don't necessarily think it's great, but I think it's fine. I don't think it is a newsworthy. I don't think it is an alarming arrangement. because I don't think the NIL, like where the numbers get, scary for Oregon State is if Blueprint is able to raise, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million in NIL. And by and large, I don't think that there is a world where, Oregon State is bringing in, that much money in NIL. It's getting routed. People are being encouraged to put their money into the Excellence Fund, which goes to revenue sharing. If you have a membership to I just was saying, unless I'm getting hoodwinked, I think this deal is palatable for Oregon State. I think it gives them a baseline in terms of NIL that they can give to players on top of what they are doing with revenue sharing. I think ideally that's something you're doing in-house with your own people. But over time we might see this evolve. But given all the uncertainty at Oregon State, doing this deal with relatively low overhead, I think makes some sense in the short term.
Have you heard any targets like maybe Brent Vigen from Montana State or Tim Plouffe from UC Davis?
I mean, those are names that I've been kind of kicking the tires on a lot of these for a while. Brent Vigen to me seems like a slam dunk hire. I think it's Tim Plough at UC Davis. One thing that I think could potentially work against those kind of stars of the FCS level is that the NIL revenue share is not as big of a part of the game at the FCS level. It exists. I mean, there's NIL in the Big Sky Conference as well, but it's such a smaller scale, and that's such a huge area of focus at Oregon State that I think that could go in the con list for those FCS candidates. But I would not use that. I would not strike out Brent Vigen or the UC Davis coach because of that. I think that they have both done an incredible job. I give it a huge edge to Brent Vigen because he has a much longer and stronger track record. Was part of a winning tradition at North Dakota State for ages. Worked at Wyoming with Craig Bowl. Like completely understands that blueprint, which has worked, and then has brought it to Montana State and been absolutely dynamite. And I say this the way, Chad, with great regret because I'm an alumnus of the University of Montana, and everything that is good for Montana State is bad for my soul. But Brent Vigen is a hell of a football coach, and Oregon State would be lucky to have him, and we'd get him out of the Big Sky Conference too, which I wouldn't hate. But to me, that would be. I mean, again, I'm not an AD, I'm not making these decisions, but when you talk to people about who in the West is ready to take that step, and I think what ties to the Western U.S. is a huge deal in terms of recruiting. I mean, Brent Vigen to me is among the most obvious choices. Jason Eck at New Mexico, I think, is probably in line for the Wisconsin job when Luke Fickell gets fired. He played there. He's a Wisconsin guy. That makes a lot of sense. But if not, Oregon State is a better job than New Mexico. I mean, Eck would have been a great candidate 2 years ago if Oregon State had had the time to do a more comprehensive search. So, that's a name to keep an eye on too.
Well, I appreciate your help there because I butchered back-to-back coaches' names there in Vigen and Plough. One more question for you, Bill. What's the more interesting story for your sports mind right now? Is it what's going on at Oregon State? Is it the Ducks being stunned by Indiana at Autzen over the weekend, or what we're seeing with the Seattle Mariners?
I mean, it's all of the above, but I mean, I'll be honest, I'm pretty fascinated by Oregon State train wreck. Maybe less so now that they've pulled the plug on Bray and Rob Akey is going in there, but it was funny. I was sitting at the game at Autzen on Saturday, and I couldn't take my eyes off the Oregon State game. I mean, I was just like, how bad is this going to get? What's going to happen on special teams? And sure enough, there it is.
Yep.
It was a pretty ridiculous moment. So I think now moving forward, it's probably Oregon and how they respond to adversity and getting punched in the mouth for the first time this year. I don't think we're going to see an outcome like we saw at Penn State, where losing a top 10 matchup at home broke the program. But traveling across the country to Rutgers is no easy task, and especially it's a relatively quick turnaround, right? I mean, you're going from a Saturday game to a week later you got to play 3,000 miles away in Parsippany. That's not an easy trip. So, you'd like to see the Ducks respond in pretty strong fashion. They did at Purdue a couple years ago or last year. Like that was a big moment for them to, what people thought was maybe a trap game. They went out and blanked Purdue. Yeah. So Rutgers is better than Purdue was last year, but I think that it's a moment to pick themselves up off the mat.
Can you imagine the plane full of cash Penn State's going to send to Bloomington to try and encourage Curt Cignetti to be their coach? That's going to be crazy.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I don't even know. Isn't it amazing that the hottest coach in America is 64 years old and, probably closer to retirement than you, me.
We need Incredible. To see we need a 30 for 30 on how he was able to turn Indiana around in 2 years as a football team. It's mind blowing. I don't understand. I really don't.
I don't either. I mean, it feels like it's through sheer force of personality.
Yes,
honestly, huge credit to Cignetti and Indiana Boost for getting their act together, hiring the right coach, and taking advantage of the rules of college football to bring in players who brought immediate success. It's unbelievable.
And Bill, I don't even think I like the guy or his personality, but I respect the heck out of him, man. What a football coach. It's like, wow.
Amazing. And then I was fun because I followed him around after the game. I was keeping an eye on him. So I wanted to see, I thought he was going to be, crowing and boasting and just, because he has been such a braggadocious coach. Huh. And I mean, it was so funny. I mean, you watch him on the sidelines going crazy at Autzen, and then once the game was over, he almost looked bored. He seemed so unimpressed by himself, and I thought that was great awesome. Entertainment too.
Well, I appreciate that insight. Bill Oriam, columnist for the Oregonian here in the Rip City Drive. Bill, thank you. This is how cool Bill is. He was driving up the freeway. We've all been on that drive up I-5. It's boring. He's like, "Do you want me to pull over so we can have a better signal?" I was like, "Yes." He did that. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate you.
Hey, I appreciate the Home Depot in Salem being right off the freeway. It gave me a great place to park and hang out a few minutes to chat with you. So thanks, Chad.
All right, you got it, buddy. Big thanks to Bill Oram for taking time out of his busy day. He's been all over this story with Oregon State, and now they will move forward and, putting the firm together for the coach search, and we'll see what they're able to come up with. But this was the right time to do it. There probably will be a mass exodus in the portal, but that's okay. Just strip it down to the studs. And then, start over and rebuild and be patient with the coach. It's going to take time. Little Cracklin' Rosie. Boy, Shacker's pulling out some of the classics today. It started with Wang Chung, and now it's ending with Cracklin' Rosie. And I ain't going to lie to you, I love Neil Diamond. I've seen him in concert once back in 96. I took my mom and dad. It was at Rose Garden. He was on a circular stage, one of those rotating dealios. He's a stud. All right, 503-248-0620. Chris Burkhart's got Courtside Monday, which is coming up at 6. The Falcons lead the Bills by a score of 21-7 right now at the Dome in Atlanta. And the Mariners crushed the Blue Jays in Game 2 to take a 2-0 lead in the ALCS, if you can believe that. Think about what they've done. Friday night, you had the 15-inning marathon. Last night, they took Game 1. That rally was started on a Cal Raleigh homer that left the bat at 108 miles per hour exit velocity. And they come back today and just put on an offensive display with homers from Julio, from Polanco, and Naylor. Pretty sweet. Blazer game tomorrow, 7 o'clock tip against the Warriors. Chris will have game day at 5 right here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. I've been listening to this song right here a lot over the last few days. And it's one of those songs that the more you listen to it, you don't get tired of it. You just discover new parts about the song that you enjoy. This is a great night. I am watching multiple games all at the same time. I just got done watching the Mariners thrash the Blue Jays. I've got the Bears and Commanders going. We're nearing the end of the first half in Atlanta with the Bills and the Falcons. And right now I'm watching on another screen the Dodgers and the Brewers from Milwaukee. That game is scoreless, top of the third in Milwaukee, game one of the NLCS. And the Mariners in full control now. That is such a great story. What a great story, especially with all the things that have gone on since Friday night. How the Mariners held on to win that game against Skubal. Even when I go back and watch it a second time, I'm like, how did this happen? The runs were tough to come by. And then it looked like neither team wanted to win the game. And then both teams mismanaged the entire situation. But the Mariners got it done. And then they bounce back. And they get the game one victory in a situation where they were exhausted. And then from there, they're able to come out and get this offensive explosion in game two. It's pretty awesome. Ridiculously awesome. All right, Blazers, 2 more preseason games, and then the regular season will kick off a week from Wednesday as basketball season is upon us. And the wintertime weather is coming in. I did sneak in around to golf this morning. It was freezing balls outside. It's like, it's the first time I've worn pants. I had to, kind of bundle up a bit. It was cold. Hands were cold. It's just a different experience. Wet ground. It rained a lot over the weekend. So we're now transitioning into a different time of the year, but really have enjoyed the sports over the last few days. The college football games, there were some great games, and there were some maddening games. I watched the Arizona-BYU game. The freshman quarterback for BYU, Bachmeier, he's still learning the passing game. They don't trust him completely in the pass game, but he's a great runner. They got up 14-zip early on Zona down in the desert in Tucson. And then there was a lightning delay for over an hour. And then Arizona came out and over the next couple of quarters scored 24 unanswered to take a 24-14 lead. And then BYU got a field goal and scored a touchdown with less than a minute remaining to force overtime, and they won it in overtime. That was an impressive game. I enjoyed Colorado's victory over Iowa State and what that meant for Coach Prime. Still stunned by what happened with Indiana and Oregon. Like, Coach Cignetti, he's one of those guys that I just marvel at. Like, it must be good to be Coach Cignetti right now. I don't even think I like his personality. Like, he seems like he might be a bit of an a-hole, maybe. I don't know. I don't know him. I'm just telling you that's the impression I get. But he's a darn good football coach. I just can't believe how well prepared they were. Like, if you would have told me that Indiana was going to win the game, I would envision, like, some type of fluke situation where, like, the Ducks maybe turned it over 4 or 5 times. A couple of trick plays. But the way they won the game by just physically dominating the Ducks up front was stunning. And you come out of that game and you're like, wow, Indiana is legit, really good. So let's ask the question again. Who are the best teams in college football? We asked the game after the Ducks win over Penn State. Ohio State remains unbeaten. They beat Illinois over the weekend. Miami sits at 5-0 at number 2. Indiana's 3 in both polls. They're 6-0, followed by Texas A&M and Ole Miss. Now, I've been really impressed with Ole Miss throughout the course of the season. I like their quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. I like their offensive coordinator, Charlie Weiss Jr. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Lane Kiffin for multiple reasons, some football and some not. But they look really good. And then they come out and, put this weird effort out against Washington State. It was hideous. They probably should have lost the game. I'm going to chalk it up to we're playing Washington State. We don't know who the hell they are, but we're getting ready for Georgia the following week. And, that's a classic trap game scenario for the youngsters. Alabama's win at Missouri was very impressive. So they got road wins now at Georgia, at Mizzou. And Kalen DeBoer seems to have righted the ship. They look good. Texas Tech is awesome. because they've spent a ton of money on the roster and their defensive line is physical. Their offensive line, they run the ball well. This is not your dad's Texas Tech. This is a different brand, more geared towards line of scrimmage play. Oregon sits at number 8 and number 9 in the AP and coaches poll. Just fine. Legit. LSU bounced back after the loss to Ole Miss. I still don't trust their offense, but I think defensively they're pretty solid. Tennessee sits at 5-1. Georgia Tech 6-0 at number 12. Notre Dame 13th at 4-2, and they haven't beaten anybody, which is comical. They got USC coming up. Oklahoma should be ashamed of themselves with that ridiculous effort they put out against Texas. I have a good idea. Let's rush John Mateer back into the lineup. He'll stink, and we'll lose to Texas, and then we lose a good excuse with the committee because we played our starting quarterback, you morons. Just a complete mismanagement of all things by Brent Venables. Why'd you rush him out on the field? Did you think he was going to be ready to play Texas with their speed and strength after not really practicing all week, you dum-dums? Whatever. Just dumb. BYU 6-0. Missouri's first loss was to Bama. Vandy's only loss is to Bama. I mean, there were some good teams in the top 25. I think Utah's legit. Very impressed with USC's win over Michigan because they won the battle at the line of scrimmage. We'll see what they do against Notre Dame. So we got good games on the horizon. Good games. Great win by the Seahawks, too. Nice bounce back after the loss to Tampa. Defense played much better. And the combination between Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigma is legit. All right, that's going to do it for me. Big thanks.